Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and here we are, post-combine. I'm excited for the draft. We are in the heat of it now, and so I want to cover some of the stuff that I found out in the combine from the numbers. I really enjoy that part, and so here is everything that I collected, all the data on them. You can find this up on my website, www.thefforge.com. There is a link down in the description to the website. If you would like to look into this closer, I will briefly explain that in a moment. In this video, from the title, you should be able to tell we're going to be covering the interior defensive linemen. That's going to be the DNs and the D tackles mashed up into this group here. And I will look at 5 prospects that intrigue me in this video. That's roughly the number I'm trying to stick to, but the number may be more or less depending on the position. Last season, some of the guys that I loved and found in this exact same process were Travon Walker, Otito Ogbonnia, I screwed that name up, Travis Jones, Jordan Davis, Ayuma Wazurik, and Thomas Booker were several of the names that just in this part of the process that really stood out to me. This is the time of the year to be celebrating these young kids and their potential futures. I'm not a GM. I don't have a team that I'm picking these players for. So I'm not looking for guys that I'm not interested in, guys that I don't like, guys that I wouldn't want my team to draft. That's just not what I'm interested in figuring out here. I'm looking for my guys, some of the gems maybe in this draft, whether they are the first rounders or undrafted free agent kind of guys. I like to imagine where these guys could fit in on a football team on the football field. I like to kind of paint a picture with these numbers for these guys. As a reminder, this is just based on the physical traits and the athletics. That's just a small piece of the complete puzzle for who these guys are and whether they'll be successful or not. That said, especially this year for this video, after I have picked out the guys, after I have tried to paint my picture of what I think of them based on what I'm seeing here on paper, then I've gone to these scouting reports to see are some of those things translating, or maybe they're even weaknesses for the guys despite them doing good here, and just get a little bit of a more complete picture on these guys in order to be a little bit more accurate for you. On to a quick explanation here of what we're looking at on this chart. First of all, over here on, obviously we have their names, but then over here on the left, I have this height adjusted size prospect score. It's not a random name, but that's what we're going to call it. It's definitely not perfect, and I will quick point out that a 6.0 is actually pretty much just average. So, and being average in this group of guys is far from a bad thing. That score is not based on what we're seeing right there, big mouse. That score is actually based on this little portion of the chart, and what this is I have adjusted their athletics for how big they are based on pounds divided by inches. How many pounds do they have on their body per how tall they are? So, bigger, stronger, faster, whatever. That's what especially the modern day NFL, it's what it's all about. So if a guy is huge and runs really well, that's awesome. And so as we'll get into with one guy who will really show this, I just really ended up using that to help point out some guys who may have not stuck out to me otherwise, but it's far from some true and told prospect score for these guys. It's not a final score. We'll just put it like that. I won't go over the color scheme over there because we're not going to really be over there too much, and it's pretty much it's very similar to over here. So over here, it's going to go blue, green, no coloring, then orange, bright red, dark red. Layman's terms, this is how I like to think about it. Blue's excellent. Dark green's going to be very good. Then we have above average. Then we have average. Below average, not good. Horrible there, as you can see by the color scheme. Mathematically, it's roughly the top 8% at this position based on, I have 2 years of combine data and 1 year of pro day data from last season. The pro day data is not included here. This is just all the guys from last year's combine and this year's combine. How do they stack up against each other? And so, like I said, top 8% for the blue. You can see the rest there. Bottom 8% would be the horrible. and average is going to be about the middle 50% of guys. These numbers, once again, are not exact. So let's get into my top 5 defensive linemen, intriguing prospects in no exact order. However, I will say I think the top 2 here are the 2 that I'm walking away with the most excited about at this point. The 2 biggest my guys right now. Maybe not the 2 most intriguing though. The first one is going to be the second guy up on this chart. I'm never going to pronounce it correctly. We'll just go with Adebawore. I tried. Can't even get that out. He is 6'2". He is a squat and athletic guy, and he has a versatile tool set to work with to align anywhere along the front line from the outside in. So from the DN spot towards the defensive tackle. I use that phrasing-wise as much of anything as to explain kind of in this instance, he is too short to be a true edge, and he is not big enough to be a true nose tackle. He should be able to disrupt the front line via both his speed and his power and explosive base. And so when we talk about a powerful explosive base, that's going to be these 2 numbers here, the vert and the broad jumps. And then the speed is going to come from the 40 time and the 10 split here. I prefer the 10 split at this position specifically. Pretty much for any position, I kind of like that more than the 40 time. But especially guys up in the front 7 here, in the trenches, when are they ever going to be running for 40 yards in a straight line unimpeded? Never. I much prefer seeing these numbers, and when they do well with the shuttle and the 3 count, I like that. I can value that a little bit more than I would the 40 time at this position. But regardless, does show some athleticism, some speed for a bigger man, especially when you look at the fact that he's one of 2 that did excellent in this testing. As a worst case scenario for Adebawore, I think that he should be a great rotational player for a multiple fronts defense, and helping them to get pressure from the inside, a team that likes to blitz maybe. Really like him in that kind of role, and think he definitely has the potential to be more than a rotational player on the field every down. I would put a 2nd to 3rd round draft grade on him, given his physical and athletic traits. Once again, that's all we're going off of here is the physical and athletic traits, and then a little bit of input from the scouting reports. They didn't disagree with anything that I had to say really about him. I seemed to kind of nail him as far as what my thoughts were pretty close to the player that he is expected to be. Another player who is not on this list, but kind of is, YaYa Diaby here, just a little bit lower. To me, feels like a Adebawore Jr. He is significantly lighter, as you can see over here, pounds per inch. Very small on his frame, not a big guy by any means, not even just tall, just not a big dude. But he has a lot of very similar attributes as to Adebawore. However, I would see him more as an outside, out further kind of prospect. He may be a better fit out the outside linebacker than even being on the line at all for YaYa. So he might be in line for a positional change, but I do like him quite a bit. If you like Adebawore, you don't get him on your team, but later on in the draft, you end up drafting YaYa Diaby. Maybe get a little bit excited about it. And you know what? His true speed there, that pure speed, can be utilized just a little bit more too at the linebacker position. Then we move on to my next guy here that's really intriguing, which is Colby Wooden at 6'4". Colby's all the way down here. Didn't do well on the height adjusted size prospect score, but that's okay. That's not everything. There are the pure numbers here to look at, and look at that. The grass is almost purely green for him, and the only area that he's down in is the weight down here. So Colby Wooden, to me, reminds me a little bit of another guy. His name is Brian Breesy. You may have heard of him. He was one of the big names in this draft, especially earlier in the draft season. His name is falling out, potentially even out of the first round, I think. Whereas when I started, as soon as the NFL season ended, so not too long ago, I think he was a top 10 prospect at that point. They're expected to be in the top 10 of the draft. He's probably a better project than Colby Wooden. Wooden. But I really like Colby. I think that Colby could be a solid budget version, kind of like the YaYa Diaby to Adebawore. I think that Colby could be the budget version of Brian Breesy. You might be able to get him later in the draft, and you might find out in 3 years that you actually got the better player out of the two. He needs some fine-tuning, both technically and physically, as you can see how little he is, to hold up at the next level. But, you know, putting on some weight, unless his body can't hold it up. I'm sure I pulled up a picture to look at him too and felt that he could add some weight onto his frame. Just some things that he'll need to do, but that's something that you can do. You eat more food and try and put it on healthily. Additionally, there are some injury concerns for him, and that's the big knock for me. Apparently, they're pretty major injury concerns that he's had. And so I'm going to put a solid 4th round grade on him. If it wasn't for those injury concerns, a 2nd to 3rd round grade, similar to Adebawore. I forgot one piece of my outfit here. Now we're balling. All right. On to the next prospect. We have Siaki Ika, who is 6'3" at the top of this chart, rated out really good when we adjusted that size, the size adjustment for his athletic traits. And he is a massive dude, and his combine numbers do not look great at first glance. Look at this. Look at all that red. Yuck. However, once we look at that size adjustment, look at that shuttle all of a sudden becomes a top 16 for his mass. The cone becomes like a top 8% for his mass. The 40 time looks much better here. Splits at least average. Yeah, he becomes quite interesting. Very athletic for his size. And what's better than a big, strong, fast man? Probably not much. So aside from that unfortunate phrasing of mine, he can move for being such a big boy, okay? And I don't think that he's a guy that I don't think that I need on my team. However, once we get into the 4th round of the draft, I'm starting to think that I would love to bring him into the fold and see what we could do with him, that kind of thing. He is very intriguing, is the best word, prospect to me in this draft. Maybe the most intriguing, just given that mass and how he tested out there for that size. Then we move on to our next guy, and that is going to be Mazi Smith, right down here. Didn't qualify for a prospect score because he just didn't attend enough of the events. But he did attend one very important one there. Mazi Smith put up 34 reps on the bench, and he also has that squat frame that I personally like up front at 4.3 pounds per inch. But he is not too short to hold his own up there, which is also good. A little bit taller than some of the other guys who might profile a little bit similarly to him. If you need a big boy to stuff the run at nose tackle, I'll take a shot with him. You'd like to see larger hands, longer arms. Those are not assets that he has, that especially the long arms I do really like to see. But they're average. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a knock, basically, to him at all. Unfortunately, I really don't have enough here to give him a grade of my own. But the fact that he didn't do more testing is almost always a good sign that there's someone who really doesn't. They have more to lose by potentially doing poor somewhere in the athletic testing than they have to gain by doing great, which means that they're usually projected to be pretty high in the draft, at least at the time of the combine. And I'm sure we'll get some pro day numbers from him as well. But as of right now, don't have enough to go off of. He did, look into him a little bit, scouting report, and some just current top players at each position for the draft. He does seem to be like a top 3 guy at the nose tackle position specifically. And I'm thinking that his bench might make some teams start to question whether they should put him over Keanu Benton, who is higher up on most boards than him. I think he's made an argument for that here. Look for him to go anywhere from the 2nd to the 4th round, honestly, because last year, a guy who I personally liked more than Mazi Smith, Travis Jones from UConn, went in the 3rd round. So that's where I come up with this big range here, because if Travis Jones went in the 3rd round, then he should be like the next nose tackle taken off the board, right? Which would push him all the way back, probably into like as a 4th round selection in last year's draft. This year's draft, I'm just not seeing the same talent. I thought last year's draft was incredibly deep, a lot of interesting guys, good draft. I'm not falling in love with a whole heck of a lot of guys this year compared to last season, which means that there's just going to be less competition for Mazi Smith to get drafted. So maybe he does get drafted all the way up in the 2nd round. Very much possible. I think that's where he's currently being projected to be drafted. Now let's move on to the last guy, Jalen Redmond, who is a 6'2", right here. And just look at that. He was nice enough to do all of the physical testing for us, and he's above average to good in all of the categories. This puts him in a top 25 percentile. He is a little bit short, and he doesn't have very long arms, but athletically, he doesn't have any weaknesses. Well, he doesn't have, any weaknesses based on what we're seeing here. He is on the better side of being a jack of all trades, master of none. That's based on his testing, but it's also based on looking at scouting reports. So that was a thought that I had looking at him, which was pretty much verified in the scouting reports on him. I don't want to call him a tweener, because I think that he is more than that, but I'm having a hard time of imagining like a distinct role for him on a defense. I can imagine a few roles for him, but I can't imagine where he thrives the most. And in that sense, I feel like he's kind of just a clay mold that a coaching staff could get their hands on and mold into what they need out of somebody like him. And one benefit for him in that sense is looking at his frame. It looks like he could put on some weight, or he could lean down, so to speak, and just get more lean. I think he could go in either direction, and his body would be perfectly fine with that. So that's, once again, very good in terms of versatility of what a coaching staff could do with him. If he does well in his interviews, I would put a 5th round draft grade on him, but there are reasons to not be surprised if he doesn't go all the way up until the 7th round or so. That's very much possible for him. I think that these combine numbers are going to assure the fact that he does get drafted in this draft, unless he absolutely bombed elsewhere in the process. There are a few notable names I just want to quick bring up that were also, interesting. Just I like these other guys better. We're going to start off with Isaiah McGuire here. Very light guy, not big hands, but I love a good vert, good broad. Had a good 3-cone, like the shuttle a little bit more than a 3-cone, but like all of the hat, good 40 time, longer arms. So I really, you've kind of figured out the types of guys that I like. A little small here at 268 pounds. Then we have Keandre Coburn right up here. And Keandre Coburn, you see a little bit of red in there, some orange in there. Big dude. Not very tall at 6'2", but he's one of those guys who kind of shined over here a little bit in the same way that Siaki Ika did as a nose tackle, is obviously where he projects. Then we have Moju Oramo right up here. Moro Ojamo. I got that totally backwards. Who are, as you can see, another guy, long arms, big hands. That's good. Good job on the bench at 29 reps. Really good there. And a solid vert. So like the physical testing that we saw from him there, he stands out to a certain extent. I'd be interested to find out more about him. Then, of course, we have Brian Breesy, who's really built more like an edge here. He played nose tackle in college. I had forgotten that, and so in preparation for this, I was like, I thought he was an edge. Why didn't he test with the edges? No, he's not an edge. I think that's part of where he may have fallen in drafts a little bit. Is he's not going to be able to play nose tackle at least to the same amount of success probably at the next level, unless you could put some bulk on his frame. But then again, once again, that's something that a top 10 guy should be ready out of the package, ready to go. You shouldn't need to do too much to them to get him ready for the next level. And so his testing wasn't ultra impressive here, but still a very interesting guy. And he has the physical profile there at 6'5.5". You love a guy who could knock down some balls at the line, big hands there too. And he did well in college. Then we have Zach Pickens, who I believe, where are you, Zach? Here he is. A lot of green there. Once again, really solid job in the shuttle, 3-cone, broad jump, all the things I like. Not so great on the bench there, but really long arms, big hands, a solid 7'4", pretty fairly prototypical body there, average. And so like him a fair bit. I believe part of the reason that I like him too is he stood out to me on the field drills for this position. That is it for the defense line, interior defensive line. I will try and be scooting these videos out there daily. So look forward for another position tomorrow. Hopefully everything goes as planned. Also, if you're still sticking around, first of all, feel free, drop a like if you're still here. Then I feel like you liked it if you're still here. Do the comments. Oh, I really would appreciate comments about these guys specifically. Is there a reason I shouldn't? You think that I shouldn't be liking them as much? Are there some things that looked really good on paper, but because you watch them every weekend in college, you know that that didn't translate? I love to hear that. I want to be right on the guys that I'm liking at the end of the day. So, love any kind of personal thoughts, insider information on guys, any guys that I didn't put on this list that you like. Let me know about them. It's great. Helps the algorithms as well. But I love that conversation. I'll join in on it. I'll check guys out if they're recommended to me. Take a closer look at them. I've been kind of AFK for a little bit as far as posting stuff, even though I've been getting some videos out there. So apologize for that a little bit. I was expected to have moved over the combine weekend all the way up north and drive there, about a 24-hour drive from where I'm at to where I was going to be moving. And I packed up for it, everything, cleaned the space out. Last minute, quite last minute, a day or two beforehand, plans changed. I'm staying where I'm at, so and unpack things. Still very much packed up actually, because I just started watching the combine instead of doing all that. So yeah, that's where I've been at, but looks like I'm back up and running here. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Peace out.